when I look for my business on Google, I see that I'm showing up on the first page, and it's like, how many times have you been doing that search? Oh yeah, I usually check it once a week. And it's like, okay, well, there you go.
The only property you own on the internet is your website.
If you leave a lot of gaps on your website and how you talk about your brand, AI will try and infer, and when it tries to infer it, it may get it wrong.
Hello, and thanks for joining us today for this episode of the Marketing Guides for Small Business podcast. I'm Paul, and I'm joined by Ken Tucker from Changescape Web, Ian Cantle from Outsourced Marketing, and Jeff Steck from Tailor Marketing. And together, we're your marketing guides. So today we're talking about how search engines tailor search results. And this is by no means comprehensive. It's kind of an overview, but you may not have realized that search engines tailor results to individual users. And that's why Googling yourself to see how you're ranking is not a reliable strategy. But there are some ways to manage it by unifying your brand signals across multiple platforms. And that's something we've talked about on several previous podcasts, whether you call it omni-channel, multiple platform, whatever you want to call it. Putting some blog posts on your website and your Facebook page is simply not enough anymore. It has to be spread across multiple platforms. So, Ken, let's start with you. Why do two people searching the same thing often see completely different results today? And which is something that a few years ago, it's not that it never happened, but it was not nearly as prevalent.
Yeah, well, I mean, you said it before that, both AI and search engines now are deeply personalized. Google said openly that no two users see the same results. And the reason for that is, it's going to factor in your location. So whether or not, if you're surfing on your cell phone or you're using a desktop, it's going to pick up an IP address, and it's going to assume a location based on that, probably from your internet service provider on the desktop. And from a mobile device, can use the GPS. So that's going to bias the results. The device, obviously, as I said, is going to play a role. What you've searched for in the past, or what you've conversed with in the past, in the case of AI, it all, is kind of factored in. And so these tools are trying to provide what they think is the most relevant search results for you. And so it's based on all of those different things. And, it's amazing to me how many people say, oh, well, I when I look for my business on Google, I see that I'm showing up on the first page. And it's like, how many times have you been doing that search? And, it's like, oh, yeah, I usually check it once a week. And it's like, okay, well, there you go. That's biasing the behavior, or using your behavior to bias the search results. So yeah, it's something that's not really all that new, but it's definitely something that people need to realize, especially, when you're trying to evaluate how you're actually really ranking.
Yeah, and on mobile, you can do a search and drive 3 blocks down the street and do the same search and get different results. Because like you said, it's using your GPS.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the things that we've always had to advise, whether they're clients or people reaching out to us or just people we're talking with about business, this has been true as long as I can remember. Related to Google, is that people would search their business and they'd be like, hey, I'm ranking number 1. I don't need your help. And you'd be like, are you using your normal Chrome browser? Are you using incognito? Are you using a different browser? Have you turned off location services? Right? There's so many different little things, but the real quick fix that worked for years, and it still works to some degree, is using an incognito window, right? Because that then, hides a lot of the information that Google would normally see, or using a browser like DuckDuckGo, that kind of stuff. But if you even do some simple things like that, you'll at least see what more of the average people out there are seeing rather than your customized search, right? If you do a Google Map search and you're in your profile in Google, you'll see all the pinned locations of everything you've ever pinned in Google Maps, right? So all of that information is available to Google, when you're using your profile and stuff isn't hidden.
Google's probably recording this right now.
Probably.
The information.
Mm-hmm.
So, Jeff, how has personalization changed the way people discover brands online?
Yeah. I think before we get too deep into that, it's probably important to talk about what is personalization, really, right? It's not just like, it used to be, you want to personalize your emails, hey, first name, comma, right? And that's all it was. It was just putting in little snippets of information that were so, easy to do, but it was still all the same content going out to everybody. That's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about just using somebody's name, but recognize the entirety of information that is available about them, as we were just talking about, that can be gleaned from their past search history, from their location, from their GPS. And then really what it comes down to is tailoring the experience. We've talked about EEAT and SEO before, and Google is really about the experience. That's the E, right? They want everyone to have a good user experience. And the more you can personalize everything about what you offer up, the content that you show, even sometimes the language that you use. Now, you got to be a little bit careful with that. But if you can tailor things to different personas, to different wants and needs based on some of the signals that you can get from search intent, especially in the AI world. We'll talk about more about that later, but AI does a great job of figuring out intent and tone. The more you can use those things, the better it is. So people are starting to expect that more. They're starting to see content and responses and chats and emails and everything that's coming to them, not just personalized with their name, but actually personalized with like, hey, this business gets me. They understand where I'm coming from. They understand what I'm looking for. And that's where we really need to get. So while your traditional search matters, the experiences matter more. The experiences that you can give to people and the experiences that people are looking for matter a lot more. So that's where some of the other platforms comes in. TikTok, for the demographics that use it, I'm not saying everyone should be on TikTok, but if your target audience is on TikTok, be on TikTok and expect to have more personalized content, and people are using the long tail to find it. They're not just doing, 3 keyword searches. They're looking for very specific things, looking for very specific experiences. Similarly, AI builds that history, that body of knowledge about the person it's interacting with. So make sure that the stuff you do, any AI chatbots that you build, any AI experiences, AI-driven experiences, and any content you gather, you can personalize the overall experience that you're giving to people. Users have come to expect it to the point, I think the statistic is, I don't have it off the top of my head, or in front of me, so this is off the top of my head. I think it's like 78%, somewhere around the 70 to 80% range of people that are interacting with your brand are turned off if they feel they're just getting a very generic experience and it's not personalized for them. In other words, users are expecting it now. They want the content, they want the experience. They have to be relevant right away and not just generic pablum that's pushed out to them. And if they don't find that, then they're going to jump. They're going to go to another brand, another business, another product that will give them what they're looking for. So brands need to be really on top of that. They need to work it. They need to have their listings, their information available through the AI generated summaries, through recommendations, through social feeds, all kinds of things, not just keyword rankings in the old school search intent. The old school, let's face it, the old school search is dropping off anymore. We've talked about zero-click searches before. So, you've got to be where people are and you've got to give them what they're looking for. And that means it's got to be personalized to them and their intent.
I think this is why, we've talked about the importance of short form video. Short form video is different. it is all based on personalization. It is delivered for you on the platform. The algorithms have been tuned to deliver the content that they think you want based on all of the stuff that they know about you. And so you now have a third dimension, of being found online. I mean, it used to be the classic search. Then there was, following and things through social media. And now you've got this for you kind of concept that was really driven by TikTok, and, YouTube created shorts. Instagram completely redid their algorithm based on what TikTok was doing, and changed from being image based to video first based, because of that. So that's all based on personalization.
Mm-hmm. And even take it to the point where if you're building videos and you have a broader demographic, broader target audience, you might build different versions of the videos for the different demographics, because they're going to resonate. A video built for boomers is not going to resonate with Gen Z, and vice versa. So if you have a product that's applicable to both, if you have a service, a brand that's applicable to both, you want to position it a couple of different ways. Now, you got to be careful because you want your messaging to be consistent, but we'll talk about that later. But you've got to tap into your audience and meet them where they are. And that probably means for most businesses doing the same thing in a couple of different ways. And I think one of actually a couple of the different insurance companies, you see that very, very clearly in the campaigns they're running, that they're geared for different target audiences. It's the same product. It's doing the same thing. But, car insurance geared for Gen Z is different from car insurance geared for boomers. And you'll see it in the campaigns.
And I think the big strategic takeaway for me from this section, as well as the prior section, is just, if I were to boil it down into one word, it would be relevance, right? Relevance has always been vital. It's always been true. And it's even more true today, that you need to know your audience. You need to know your ideal customer. You need to align your messaging with them, with their desires, with their communication style, with the platforms they're on. And when you create relevance, that's going to resonate with them. And resonating is it's about creating that connection with someone. And I think equally true is that we're talking a lot about personalization. If you don't do this right, you can actually burn bridges rather than create bridges. So you need to be very strategic about this. You need to create the right message for the right audience. And if you have multiple audiences, you need to create multiple styles of messaging for them that fits that particular audience.
Mm-hmm.
So, Ian, we've talked in the past about the role trust plays with Google when it's looking at your brand, but in this new personalized search landscape, what role does trust play?
It doesn't. I just wanted to say that because you always say
that. Cool.
No, I think, you have to remember that why is somebody performing a search, right? They're performing a search to find a result. And so trust is, they need to trust the results that they're getting. And so not only is trust vital in the eyes of the searcher in the results of the search, but also in the platform of the search. And I think this is a really key point for people, because not every platform is entirely trustworthy yet. Google became the biggest search engine in the world because it provided the most relevant, trustworthy results available, bar none. Excuse me. There was a time when we had far more choices for search. There were other big players at the time with Google. Alta Vista, Yahoo. I mean, like, these names are gone now, right? And it's because Google really honed in on this, giving the very best results, the most relevant results in a trustworthy manner. And that trust has paid a price at different times because of different things in Google's past, and they've had to build that trust up again. But I would say we're in a little bit of the Wild West right now, in that from an AI search standpoint, this nobody knows who the winners are going to be, right? We're in the infancy of this whole realm of AI search. And so Google has earned our trust. The other platforms are earning our trust. But trust is really important, because if you can't trust the platform or the results with which you're searching, that's a problem, right? You're just going to abandon it. So right now, we as users of all of the different platforms that we use, search platforms, right, including Google still, because now you have the AI summaries and we're testing those. We're all testers. We as users are searching. A lot of us, I do this all the time, guys. I don't know if you do, but because I'm not entirely trusting of some of the results I'm getting on some of the AI engines, so I still do searches, comparative searches in Google to see what the results are coming up on there, and seeing what's coming up on ChatGPT or Claude or some of the other ones. And we as users are comparing the results and trying to determine where's the best platform. Because ultimately, all we want are the best answers. We want them fast, and we want good answers, right? And so, and we want it to be easy. And ideally, we want the systems to learn more about us so that when we do searches, it gets easier and easier over time. So I think that's really important. Personalization amplifies both strengths and weaknesses. Talked a little bit about that earlier. So you have to create really strong brand signals that align with the people you're trying to connect with. But the bottom line is, the landscape of AI search can provide users with better results. Hopefully, that's what we're hoping for. That's what we're seeing in some of it. But we're still seeing hallucinations in AI, even though they're getting less. Meaning results are sporadic sometimes. Sometimes the information's out of date, right? But we want better results, personalized results, easier and faster results, and wherever we find those, we're going to gravitate towards that. And Google is still the 90-pound gorilla. That's a very small gorilla. 590-pound gorilla in the room, and the other platforms are trying to steal market share from them, and Google's trying to hold on to it by still providing the best results, right? So,
yeah, and that's why when Microsoft and their partnership with ChatGPT, they saw what was happening, and they're like, this may be our chance to steal market share from Google. All right, so Ken, back to you. How are these AI overviews and AI mode changing search behavior?
Yeah. So when you talk about search behavior, I'm not exactly sure what you mean, but I will tell you, what one of the things that happened, and we had Rand Fishkin on, several months back, talking about the concept of zero-click searches, which is where, you're getting the information provided in an AI overview, and people aren't even having to click to go find that answer. And that's really, right now, the good news for our listeners, the small business owners and marketers that are out there, it hasn't made a significant impact yet. Doesn't mean you're safe or out of the water. You need to know what's happening. But the majority of searches that have been impacted by this are informational queries. So, my favorite is always, how old is Brad Pitt, or, where did Brad Pitt go to high school? Same city I did, by the way.
I knew it.
You did? All right.
Just by
cool.
your looks, you guys look identical.
Yeah, I've been working on this for a while. So, what's sad about that is, if you're in the information business, you're no longer getting the credit of a click. So if that's what you're really looking for validation, then you're barking up the wrong tree. What you really need to be thinking about is, is your brand being mentioned? Because we're seeing a shift to where brand mentions are now very, very, very important. And Paul, you talked about earlier, the omni-channel or, multi-channel places that your brand is mentioned has become more and more important. You want to make sure that you've got the right information. You can structure your content so that it's going to have a better opportunity to show up as an AI overview. So, there are a couple of queries that are going to go on, right? So somebody might type in, why is James Hardy citing the best citing for, a location like St. Louis, Missouri? That's an informational query. And then there are going to be queries that are, who's a James Hardy citing contractor? and that's going to shift over more to a local search result as opposed to an informational query. So, if you want to, and if you have the bandwidth, it's probably prudent that you try to work on both, especially, if you're in a competitive market, and being found through search results is very important.
Yeah, I would go so far as to say it's not an option anymore, as far as being, the whole multi-channel, omni-channel, whatever you want to call it.
Because that hasn't been an option for a very long time, honestly.
Right.
But it's absolutely critical now. Where before, I think a lot of people felt like, there are tiers of, SEO, sophistication, right? Most people thought that omni-channel stuff was kind of the premium level. Guess what, folks? It's no longer the premium level. It's the expected and required level that you have to have. If you're doing anything less than that from an SEO perspective, be honest with yourself based on the investment levels that you're making and the results that you expect to see.
Yeah, because Google and Microsoft and the LLMs, they pay attention to where your brand is, where it's mentioned.
Yeah, this is the comment that I was going to make with Ian's question. I knew this question was coming up. I thought it fit better here. Going back to the trust, take it back to how you talk about yourself, the content you put out, how good it is, how trustworthy it is, and then expand that across not just Google, but the AI engines and the AI overviews and everything. It's got to be comprehensive content. It's got to be accurate content so that it's trustworthy and so that it's establishes you as the leader in that body of work, is the term we use a lot, gets picked up and leveraged across multiple platforms because search behavior is changing and how content is consumed, search results are consumed is changing along with it, of course.
Yes, it definitely is. Measuring performance, Jeff. Why is it harder in the personalized AI-driven world than it traditionally has been? Measuring the performance of anything.
Yeah, it's typically when you think about measuring, if I change this, is the effect good or bad? You're making small incremental changes to something that's established. And the problem we run into now is in the personalized world, everything is different. So how do you measure small incremental changes when everything is different anyway? Everything is rewritten, whether it's rewritten by AI or whether it's multiple versions of something, as we talked about earlier. Stuff is being personalized for the consumer. It's a lot harder to measure. If I change the color of the button from blue to red, do I have higher conversions? If I change this word, do I have higher conversions? When that word may not even be seen by the consumer anymore because it's being rewritten by AI. So the fundamental, don't change too many things at once and see what the effects are. Keep the good and then change the next one and see what the effect is. That's kind of out the window now because things are personalized. Even AI responses, we talked about Google search results varying, and if you move 3 miles down the road, getting a different result. Even AI responses, if you're in a chat with AI, you can get different responses to your queries at different times of the day, or as your chat progresses and the AI learns more and more about you and puts together that composite view, it's using everything it learns to personalize everything that comes after it. So that makes it harder to measure what's working, what's not working, because everything is changing on the fly. So you can't really attribute things back to one single thing anymore. You gotta kind of look at the body of, and if you change something, is it good overall or bad overall? And it's just a lot harder to get the good, meaningful data. So, what does that mean for marketing a business? It means you got to start thinking more about overall visibility. How are you showing up? Where are you being seen? What's the sentiment of people that are seeing it? And how consistent is what you're doing and what you're saying across multiple personalized touch points, keeping in mind that, if you don't constrain it, the AI especially is going to have free reign to rewrite things as it sees fit. We had this early on in AI, we had this big problem of sycophancy where the AI was sucking up to people, as I put it, right? You don't want it making stuff up about your brand to suck up to people. Now the sycophancy problem is diminishing. but you've got to, monitor your AIs. You've got to monitor your messaging and still go back to ask people, right? Hey, what was your experience like? Do some surveys. What could be improved? All the standard stuff we've talked about all along, just, put it on steroids for the era when everyone has a different experience.
Damn suck-ups.
I think I know we're predominantly talking about search right now, but I don't want people to lose the fact that there's still a heck of a lot of measurement you can do on enormous amounts of platforms, right? So any particular social platform you're on, if you're advertising, if you're on Google Ads, if you're tracking people that come to your website, if you're using a CRM and marketing automation system, like there's enormous amounts of information that you can still measure and track. Specifically, what we're talking about is in search itself, it's getting really hard because in this personalized world, when so many dynamics are at play, it makes it hard to say, hey, the search engine served up my company's information in this exact way. So I'm going to start to, reaffirm that messaging idea across other areas. That's where it's really hard. And I just wanted to reinforce that thought because I don't know if everybody understands that. So
yeah, I go back to it's not about one little thing. It's about the body of work. It's about everything taken together. And the more comprehensive a picture you can get, then you can start to, build those pictures of what's performing or what's not performing. But it's not about one micro change anymore.
Yeah, I just mean like on Google Ads, right? You haven't lost the capability of determining like, hey, here's if we're doing A/B testing, here's what's working. And it doesn't mean on your website you can't use measurements to see where people are getting stuck and do some A/B testing on the color of your button. Like all of that stuff is still absolutely relevant and absolutely vital in the overall bigger picture of marketing.
Right.
But in AI search, this is where the challenge is.
Well, even the ads as an example, they will be potentially have the text rewritten, potentially different versions of headlines, but the site links that are shown, the extensions that are shown, those will all vary based on what the ad platform thinks people are looking for. So yeah, data's still there. You can still get it. It's just not as direct a line to in some cases even know what to do with it, but to draw conclusions too quickly, I guess is the way I would put it.
Yeah, and a lot of these traditional metrics as they've existed in the past, they assumed everyone saw the same thing, and no one sees the same thing anymore. And it really, if you think about it, kind of goes back a few years ago when Google decided that they were going to rewrite your meta description for a web page based on the search query. And they still do that. So you can put a meta description in there, and you should, but that doesn't mean that's what everybody's going to see.
And we've talked about it before, right? That the only property you own on the internet, you don't own your Google business profile, you don't own your TikTok profile, you don't own your Instagram or Meta profile. The only one you own is your website, right? So it's changing, right? Some of the zero-click stuff is changing some of that, but meaning it's diminishing some of the volume of people going to your website. But again, for local businesses, it hasn't dropped off dramatically. It is still the face of your business that most people are going to go to. And in that area, you have absolute control. You have absolute metrics. You have absolute A/B testing you can do. Everybody who sees it will see it essentially the same, depending on the device they're on, right?
Yeah, that's a good point. At some point, all of this personalization that's done for you, the for you is past, and it's in a point where you've got the full and direct control of it. But even on the website, if people are logged into your website, especially if it's an e-commerce site, then you can start doing personalization in there as well. And then you're back to, it's a little harder to know what's working or what's not, but you can then measure on the individual basis. Did they follow, the recommendations? Are they spending more time on sites? Are they buying more? Yeah, it's a little different, but But the fundamentals, I mean, it's still there. We're not saying don't do it. Don't worry about performance. Don't worry about monitoring. Don't worry about metrics. They're all still important. It's just if you were looking at it a certain way 5 years ago, don't look at it the same way now.
So here's a question that I think everybody not everybody, a bunch of people who are listening or viewing this are probably asking. So how do you measure how well you're doing on AI search? I know that's not a question that pops up in our conversation today, but maybe we want to leave that for another day. But I think that's the question of the hour, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's tools. There's tools for everything. It gets technical fast, right?
Yeah.
And you can do it yourself. But I mean, like everything else to make buy, you probably want to find somebody that can do it for you, that knows how to run it and knows how to set up the tools, or go invest in the tool, which may not make sense for an individual business. But the data's out there. Somebody's got it.
So speaking of technical, Ian.
Yeah, man.
Personalization. What does personalization rely on behind the scenes from a technical standpoint?
It relies on data.
Well, it does.
It relies
on creepy data. It's the creepy part.
It relies on the platform you're on to connect the dots between your data and what you're searching for and the other data that it has in its universe, right? So it works across multiple layers. It works across search engine result layouts. It works off of AI summaries, structured data, entity understanding, which is really your entity, like who you are or who your business is, and how the platform perceives you because you fed it information, or it can crawl the information appropriately about yourself or your business and your business. AI context windows. I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff that goes on in there. I mean, that's the reason why Google has been so successful at search for so long is because of data. They have done an extremely good, they're so tied in, right? They've got the search data. They've got your website data because you have Google Analytics on there and they crawl your website. They've got YouTube data. They've got Gmail data. They've got, Google Business Profiles. Like, they've created this universe for themselves that gives them an incredible advantage because of the data that it knows about you and about the businesses or information that you're trying to reach out to. So, the other platforms with AI is extremely good at connecting the dots, right? So as long as the data is there and as long as it can connect the dots, that's going to help you tremendously and help the searcher tremendously. Because again, this is what we've been trying to teach businesses for years, is that your business is relevant, right? Absolutely. You're the one that wants to attract people to you, but it's in the eyes of Google, it's the searcher that's most relevant because that's what Google's focused on in search. I'm not talking about ads and all that kind of stuff, but in search, they're trying to produce the best results. So search engines and AI models are looking for clear structure on your website, on the data that it's finding, on profiles, all of that kind of stuff. It's looking for strong entities, meaning can it determine how, even the way Google used the acronym EAT, right? That's essentially a model for entities. Like what is it that these platforms are looking for as far as how authoritative you are? Accurate facts, consistent messaging. When those signals are weak or conflicting, personalization becomes unpredictable. Or it might exclude your brand or yourself from the conversation, right? But if you create strong signals, if you follow best practices that we've been talking about for a long time with some nuances now for AI, it's going to position you in the best way possible. It's going to help them help the AI engines personalize the results. And it's all about being consistent on multi-channels, all channels, map listings, social profiles, articles, press releases, and on and on and on. Short form video, long form video, all of that kind of stuff. If you do all that, you're going to outpace your competition and show up more, for sure. Like the more good data you give the systems that align with what people are searching for. Again, understanding the strategic importance of understanding your audience and the message and their pain points and the messages that resonate with them is really key to all this.
All right. So Ken, before I ask this next question for our listeners, we keep using this word entity. Everything's an entity. But for the purposes of this conversation, think of entity as your brand. That's an oversimplification, but for what we're talking about now, just think of it that way. So Ken, why is structured data and entity or brand consistency so important right now? Not that it hasn't been in the past, but right now it's even more important than ever.
Yeah, I think it comes down to thoroughness. If you leave information undefined, it's going to be filled with a void that probably isn't going to reflect what you want it to be. So, you've got to be thorough. And that's why we talk about, you need to be consistent and thorough across all of these different channels. If there's noise out there, noise means confusion. Confusion erodes trust. Trust is one of the key letters in the EEAT acronym. So I think you've got to really think about it from that perspective. Structuring your data, what that means is there's this thing called schema markup, and it basically just helps the language models and the search engines understand what the content is about. And it categorizes it and it makes it easier to digest and understand, so that it means that it can communicate more effectively about what the brand is. So I think it's, thoroughness is just absolutely critical. A case in point is, a couple of easy examples. If you're sloppy when you build your website and you don't set your own meta titles for each and every page on your website, what are you doing? You're really giving Google a reason to question whether or not you're paying attention to your website. You're interjecting doubt, which doubt erodes trust. If you don't have your business information listed consistently across important directory sites, now more importantly than ever, Bing places and Yelp profiles are also important because they are sources of data for the AI or large language models, if people are doing searches for local data. So you've got to be consistent, you've got to be thorough. That's why I think a lot of businesses struggle because they do what's easy. It's easy to slap up a Facebook page. It's easy to put posts on social media without any rhyme or reason. It's easy to build a website. It's hard to build a good website. It's hard to build a good omni-channel marketing approach that gives you what, Ian?
That thing that
force multiplier.
That thing, yeah.
Amplification, force multiplier. So yeah, just do it. Just be thorough and consistent.
And I think that key word you said, thorough, is the important one. And let me back up a little, put a little engineering geek technical speak around it. AI is really good at taking in this huge body of work and inferring what fills the gaps in between what it knows for verified facts. So if you leave a lot of gaps on your website and how you talk about your brand, the audiences you deal with, all of those gaps are something that AI will try and infer. And when it tries to infer it, it may get it wrong. Yeah. So that thoroughness is, super important. Be as comprehensive as you can. And guess what? When you do that, you can provide a better experience to the users because they're finding what they're looking for. They're seeing it in terms that they can understand. You build your authority. You build your trust. I mean, it goes back to, again, putting in the work to show well and provide the best experience you can for your ideal clients.
Yeah, as helpful as AI is, gaps and inconsistency, like you just said, can cause it to do weird things. it will hallucinate is what the term is. And that kind of comes into the next question for you, Jeff, is
Well, and real quick, Paul, just, just everybody just think about your own experiences. How many times have people perceived something based on something that you didn't say and they interpreted it incorrectly in your everyday life? Why would we expect, any other form of communication and a communication model to be any different? Whether it's a political campaign, whether it's a personal relationship, whether it's AI trying to understand what a business is all about, when you leave gaps, you leave openings, and you create the possibility of bad information and the erosion of trust.
It's a really good point, Ken. I love how you're taking us back to basics, and like even visually when, on a Zoom call, but if we're in person and we have all of the visual body language cues, we can still misinterpret people, although it declines more when we have all those cues, right? But an AI doesn't have those kind of cues from the data it's ingesting, unless it's looking at our videos and trying to determine. Yeah. But in a lot of cases, it's not, right? It's there's certain big gaps right now as far as what types of content it ingests. And so I really like that point. Thanks for sharing that.
Thank you.
And force multipliers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and if you use ChatGPT a lot, the more you use it, it starts to tailor its answers to you, because it picks up on how you're asking questions, how you're phrasing things.
Mm-hmm.
And all of this feeds into the next question for you, Jeff, is how does this AI memory, which is basically what we've been talking about, influence brand perception over time?
Yeah, this is a pretty key to the understanding of AI and where AI is going too. Ian used the term earlier, context windows. And context windows are how much resources an AI model devotes to keeping track of things it knows about you and the conversations that you've had with it. And he was just alluding to that. The more you use it, the better trained it gets. Up to a point, the context windows are not infinite. So if you fill them up, they keep getting larger and larger. But if you fill them up, then it's going to have to start chucking things out to make room for the new stuff. So that kind of tells you that the more recent stuff is more important than the old stuff. So that says be, actively engaged in the AI as a business, right? Putting content out, things that AI will consume, be actively engaged in giving it new information to work on. Again, it's not a unlimited resource. So there are going to be trade-offs and decisions that it has to make on the fly for you. Work that to your advantage. Be current. Hit your main messaging, your main points repeatedly. The more AI sees it, AIs work off something called neural networks, and neural networks have nodes or clusters of information, and they have weights. So different clusters of information have different weights about how valuable or how important they are. And the more you can talk about something and the more you can have somebody engage about something, the higher the weight will go toward that cluster of information. So you want to be, like we've always said, putting out content, putting out relevant content that's useful, that's helpful, that people will consume, and do it on a regularly scheduled basis. So in that sense, it's not anything new. It's just we're going to make sure that we're cognizant that it's important for AI as well. And then you go to looking at, how does AI get that information? Where is it getting it from? Reddit is a pretty important source for AI right now. And as Ken talked about, schema markup on your website, making it easy for the search engines and particularly the AI models to ingest the information that you've got available, add it to their context windows that they have about you, adjust the weights that they have of all the information you're providing that people are interacting with. And ultimately, then the users that are interacting with the AI are going to feel, like they're understood, like they're getting the experience they want, like they're getting the information that they need. And that's going to lead to, higher propensity to do business with you, higher lifetime value, higher loyalty. But again, it comes back to being consistent, and personalization is going to magnify that in terms of the signals that the AIs and everything get back from their users and how they're interacting and how they're engaging with your brand.
And going back to something you said at the very beginning of that question, Paul, about how it's not exactly an echo chamber, but it's a little bit like that, right? Where it's kind of similar to on social media when you start to pay attention to certain things, those things keep popping up somehow, right? That it becomes an echo chamber, and so AI just do that over time because it learns what you like, what you don't like, and it can alter the answers. One way to avoid this, specifically for things that you really do need kind of a less personalized answer to, is you can ask ChatGPT and some of the other platforms. You can say, hey, create a new chat session or just create a new chat session, but then say, forget everything we've ever talked about and treat me as a brand new user. And that it will actually confirm whether it can do that or not. ChatGPT for sure can do that, and I've tested it. So stuff like those little tips can be really helpful for people if they want to avoid that echo chamber effect.
Yeah, on a related note, you can also ask ChatGPT or the other models, tell me everything you know about me.
Yeah,
or tell me
which is very cool and scary.
It gives you some good insights into what it's paying attention to, what it's them potentially using in chats with other people. Because unless you've got your chats, locked off from the rest of the world, it absolutely is taking them and using the data in, other aspects of the large language model.
Yeah, you could have some fun with that. So, Ian, we've talked about this a little bit, but let's go into it a little bit more. What are the biggest benefits when personalization works well?
Yeah, I think this is super important because why are we talking about this, right? And we have covered this a little bit, but the truth is personalization reduces friction, right? You're trying to create resonance with the person on the other side of the screen who's doing the searching. And so it reduces friction, it increases satisfaction, improves engagement and conversions, and users feel understood, and brands benefit from higher lifetime value and stronger loyalty. And that's a lot of promises or benefits. But those are the things that happen when you create personalization that actually works. But again, these benefits, they depend on consistency. They depend on personalization that magnifies clarity just as much as, you don't want to magnify confusion, which you guys have talked about already. And that biggest value is just that your business resonates with the people searching for it, right? That's the biggest thing. And that's why personalization is vital in all areas of your business that you can do it, right? You've talked to a really great business person when you're trying to find a service, maybe you need a plumber, and the person that can create just a connection with you that resonates with you is probably the one, as long as they're as professional and have all the, they're insured or whatever, bonded and insured. Like those are the people that the person that resonates with you is the person that's going to get the business, as long as they react quickly to you, right?
And you've used that term resonates several times, and I think it's a really good one. I remember when I started, down my marketing path, 25 years ago now, probably. The thing that resonated with me is when you're talking about, the example was somebody lands on your website, you get that first few seconds to catch their attention. You want them nodding their head going, yeah, that's me. They get me. That's what we're talking about when we say it resonates, right? And that kind of extends across everything you're doing. But you want people to really feel like your business gets them. Back when I was in the engineering world doing sales engineering support, we had this notion of vision match. You're not going to do a big enterprise level deal unless there's a vision match between the client company and the software company I work for. And that's what it's all about. It's resonating. It's getting somebody locked in. They get me. They're the right solution for me. I feel there's somebody I can do business with. I can stick with them in the long term. I have a vision match. I have a value. It all kind of falls into that same bailiwick where what you're doing is making that connection, that deeper connection, that more personal. Now we're back to the personalization, right? That more personalized connection.
And you raised two parts of that equation that are so vital, Jeff. One is resonance of logic, but then the resonance of emotion, right? You can't just have one or the other. You have to have them both, because we all make decisions based on both logic and emotion. So
Vulcans don't.
what doesn't?
I said Vulcans don't.
Well,
I would argue decisions are more based on emotion.
They
get justified with logic. They get justified with logic, but that's why it's so hard. And I had to learn coming out of the engineering world. We used to call it speeds and feeds, right? People don't buy speeds and feeds. They buy solutions to problems, and they buy that feeling, that relationship that this is the right solution for me.
Okay, so Ken, on the other side of that, what are some of the risks or downsides of over personalization?
Yeah, so I mean, we've already talked about many of these, at least indirectly. The big thing is really kind of that echo chamber concept, or where it remembers what you've engaged with in the past, and it's going to deliver that content for you, again and again and again as the user, or the searcher, or the converser with a chat GPT or whatever. What that can mean is it makes it harder for new brands potentially to be found, because that's not part of the knowledge and the recent history and the desire of and the intent of what you've been inquiring about or interacting with. The other big issue is there are definitely privacy concerns. That we're talking about massive amounts of data. How much data? There are laws that are being put in place to try to govern that a little bit. I still think that the search engines and AI are going to still be able to find ways to amass the information that they need, regardless of sadly, of the policies that are out there. But and then Ian and Jeff both had talked about the importance of you've got to resonate with the person who is doing the search, or or engaging with the chat, or whatever. And so you need to research what is important to them. What are the problems that they have? Why do they? What would make them feel comfortable with you as the solution to their problem? How are you going to make their life better? So, the practicality of doing this is, again, thoroughness and consistency are key. You've got to make sure that your brand is consistently, described and defined through the entities, through the schema markups, being in all of the right places online, which these days is a lot of different places. And you've got to, if you leave those gaps, you're creating opportunity for doubt and mistrust.
When you were talking, Ken, one of the things that comes to mind is, it's got to be real and it's got to be natural personalization, right? Because over personalization feels fake. Like the first thing that popped into my head when you were talking about over personalization is, I'm sorry, automotive salespeople. But you walk into a sales place and they use your name, like they learn your name and they use it like 10 times. And you're like, what the heck? Like that doesn't feel natural. People don't talk that way. Or you get an email and the same thing is done, or they've dropped in, data information about you or your business that just doesn't feel natural, right? It's got to be natural. Otherwise it feels, I don't know, for lack of a better word, yucky. Just doesn't feel good, and you want to run away and have a shower.
Yeah.
Down here in the States, we say icky, Ian.
Okay, I'm sorry, icky. Yeah.
Well, Canada, yucky works.
Yeah.
I'm good enough. I'm smart enough. And by golly, people like me.
So these next two questions will kind of want to say something here. We'll kind of tie up everything we've been talking about. And we always say, don't wait, get ahead of this. Because these things, everything we're talking about, it's a process. It happens over time. It doesn't happen in 2 weeks. So, Jeff, let's talk about some things that are, not that they haven't been important, but they're more important now than they ever have been, I think, is why do internal team structures matter now more than they ever did?
Yeah. This is an interesting one because, I think most people wouldn't even think about it, but think of AI and personalization as magnifying glasses, right? If you've got flaws internally, if you've got inconsistencies, incompleteness between different parts of your business, between different teams, how they're talking about things, what they're talking about, those are going to show up in the results and in the personalization. The worst thing that can happen is somebody starts down one path with your business and they get a really, good, all right, and you can do the visual graphic now. They get a really good warm fuzzy feeling about no. Okay, there you go. They get a really good warm fuzzy feeling about something and then they switch over to another product line, another area, and all of a sudden it looks and feels very different. Then that can be a real turnoff. So any internal flaws, if you will, if you're not presenting a unified front in terms of how you approach the customer, how you talk to the customer, the tone that you use, the messaging, the completeness, all of that, it's going to start to be magnified in the results and in the personalization aspects of what you're doing. You can think of these platforms and tools as mirroring how organizations work internally, and all the nastiness is going to come out. So really think again back about customer experience and how to provide a unified front when you're communicating with the customers. The traditional example I think has been solved years ago, but there used to be this big huge wall, this divide between marketing and sales. And John Jantz, we've talked about duct tape marketing a lot. He respun a version of duct tape marketing to duct tape selling. For that point, salespeople have to think more like marketers in terms of how they approach, talking, communicating with customers and clients. And I think, all of your internal teams, all of your product lines need to have that unified, coherent front. And I won't name the big company, but I know of a big company that's got a couple different competing product lines, and it's like, what's going on? They're competing with each other, and they're not saying the same things, and this just doesn't make sense. And that's the kind of thing you want to avoid.
I think this is the reason why I've been so adamant about using an AI phone system and an AI chatbot on your website, because it takes the collective knowledge of everybody on your team, if you do it right, built into a set of frequently asked questions with answers that are consistent across the board, so that the user experience, the customer experience, is going to be the same because it's trained on the right answer across a broad spectrum of people. And it would, and if done well, it's going to do better than any individual within the company, because it's going to have a broader knowledge base, or it's going to know what it can answer and escalate that to the right people. So in consistency and thoroughness, we just can't hammer that home enough.
So it comes down to communication.
Well, communication internally for sure, but also a little bit of oversight, a little bit of, high level management, leadership and direction. That all's kind of got to come into the mix too. You can't just have two organizations say, well, we're going to do this. No, we're going to do that. Well, we told you. It's not our fault. There's still got to be that top level direction and everybody getting on the same page.
All right. So Ian, feeding off of that, what ultimately separates brands that win in this environment from those that don't?
Yeah. I'd boil it down to a bunch of things. The first, this is not going to be news for the other guides or the listeners. Strategy first, right? How are you going to know who your audience is, who your competitors are, what your core difference is, how you're going to communicate that, all of that stuff, right? How are you going to know that unless you focus on strategy first? So don't try to skip that step. Taking a multi-channel approach, we've talked enough about that. That's really key. Coordination and clarity, making sure that all of your efforts are coordinated and that there's clarity across them. Success today isn't just about optimizing for Google, although you must optimize for Google. I hear people all the time like, I got to drop my SEO efforts. It's all about AI search. You're foolish. Don't be foolish. Don't be, I don't know. Google's still getting upwards of 90% of all searches for local businesses. So don't be foolish. Like you gotta keep optimizing for Google while you're focusing on AI search.
Well, the good news is that the things you do to optimize for Google are going to be 70-80% of what you need to do for AI search.
Absolutely.
But how many? A little more.
But how many businesses have been reluctant to invest in that for the past 10 years? Lots, right? And they're still trying to take the quick way through without proper investment.
Well, the good news too is if you do the things that help you show up in AI, it's also going to help you show up in Google. They're just reinforcing each other.
Yeah. That's why I've used that term search everywhere optimization, right? SEO. That's what SEO is to me today as a marketer. Is it's not just about Google. It's not just about AI engines. It's about, how do you get found on everywhere, because you can't control where people are. But yeah, don't ignore one or the other. It's about understanding who your ideal customers are, how they search, how AI summarizes content about you and your business and your products and your services, and your competitors, how brand signals travel across platforms. And so another part of it that will help you win is brands that align the teams. Jeff talked about that. He talked about unifying their message, and reinforcing trust across the markets. Those are the ones that are going to thrive in the world where AI search results are becoming more and more personalized.
I'll even add one more to it and say, you got to embrace AI, but not only have you got to embrace AI externally, you've got to embrace AI internally. We're using AI more and more in what we do, to the point that we even, shameless plug here, and I think you guys can do the same, or do the same, I should say. Can do the same. I think you guys do the same about building, AIs for your clients. That can help a lot with enforcing the brand consistency and the tone and the style when you've got an AI agent that you're using to help produce content and to develop the tactics part of use it in the strategy, sure, but also to do the tactical implementation. That old saying, old now, old 3 years plus, you won't be replaced by AI, you'll be replaced by somebody using AI. So embrace it externally because your clients and customers are using it. Embrace it internally because it can help with a lot of these things we've been talking about today.
And I think this is a good place to wrap up. I think if there's one thing to come away from this is that every search result is unique. It just is. And Kenny and Jeff, do you have anything else to add?
Be recognized, be cited, be trusted, and be chosen.
Hakuna Matata.
Paul, I think this is a good topic. Weaves in a lot of the things that we've been talking about for a while, but also in a very specific, pointed way. So I think this was really good. Thanks for choosing this one.
Came up with it all by myself. You got my email last night, right, Jeff?
Yes.
All right. So, Ian, you want to take us out?
Sure. Thank you to our listeners and viewers for joining us today and investing your time and energy into listening to us. I hope you got a lot of value from this. Again, send us your questions. We are here to serve you on this podcast, and we're also here to serve you if you need help with your marketing. So reach out to any of us because we value you as a business owner, and we want to help you thrive in this new world that we are in. So until next week, keep calm and market on, folks.